The passage that was before I stood in front of you came from Luke 24th, 13th verse through the 35th. In it, we are given a story of two individuals who are leaving Jerusalem on the day Jesus rose from the tomb, going to a town outside of first century Jerusalem. I could imagine the roads to be unpaved, full of animals and people going back and forth to their destinations. It was also still Passover, and many of the people on the road might have had a heritage of Jewish descent. So when these two men got approached by someone they did not recognize, my guess is that they were comfortable enough to share the sorrow they felt about the death of Jesus to the stranger. The stranger was able to walk along with them and share his views on the event. Then, as Jesus was heading on, the two individuals invited him for dinner, and during the meal, they recognized his presence and moved to tell the disciples back in Jerusalem. If you look at the Gospels, Luke is the only one to have any mention of this event. Earlier verses in the chapters deal with the visit to the tomb and his presence with Mary. We also have Jesus appearing to his disciples after the resurrection to let them know he is alive and ascended to heaven. These two events, before and after the walk to the Emmaus, are found in other Gospels. Yet for Luke, he wanted people to know about this event and give us as much information from the accounts that happened that day. One commentary, the New Interpreter's Bible, shares that Greco-Roman literature would contain stories of mystical travelers and people's unawareness of entertaining angels. It is also so that one might suggest that the walk to Emmaus passage was very relatable to many who read the text. They would understand how the Son of God was able to be unrecognized by people who were followers of him for a small amount of time. They would also know that an act would reveal who the stranger was, engaging with them. That act was the breaking of the bread with the two, and it opened their eyes to see Christ with them. For over 7.5 miles to 19.5 miles, or in Roman measurements, 60 to 160 stadiums. A lot of fighting Galilee. These men would walk and share with Jesus their understanding of what happened to him. They shared how the leaders of their faith and rulers sentenced Jesus to death, and how some women went to the tomb with him, appearing to them alive, yet others returned to the site with his body not found. For me, it's a lot going on in this setting. Even though Luke has the walk known only in the distance between towns, you must think of the length of the journey and the message he was giving to them about what would have happened when the Messiah arrives. These two individuals might not have been disciples, however, they seemed to know and support the movement Jesus was leading. They had to feel a certain way about all of the events. Could these individuals be in doubt and loss of hope? And how did Jesus give them hope after witnessing these events? It has been times when I would leave sporting events sad to the outcome of the team's performance. So there was one sporting event that I recently attended in 21 during Halloween weekend in Tempe, Arizona. It was at Arizona State's homecoming. That whole weekend was interesting, from witnessing the Lantern Walk on Friday evening to the homecoming parade and seeing Fox Sports announcers all over the place. And I even ran into one of my old college buddies from Texas out there, and he noticed me by the way that I walked. So we caught up and hanged out for a little bit, and then he contacted me a little bit later after the game. But anyway, after the game, I was with some people who were fans of Arizona State, and the team was struggling very bad. I was also sitting in a section where there were a lot of Washington State Cougars graduates that were there, and a lot of people that were from ASU were depressed. So for me, being an out-of-towner, I tried to convince some of the Sun Devils that their quarterback would take them to a bowl game. Don't be discouraged. It'll be all right. And I wonder about our conversations that I left with them, because later in that season, their team was able to play Wisconsin in the Las Vegas Bowl, and maybe those individuals saw me as someone who gave them a message of hope for their season. I also wonder about Jesus' state after leaving the tomb. Does his appearance reflect a body decomposing, or was he not clean? The reason I wanted to point out this is because even Mary took some time to recognize who Jesus was when he left the tomb. His clothing might have been with blood, and the understanding of the environment of his body, he could have been very dirty. These men could have felt the need to assist Jesus out of love and make sure he was safe from harm. In 2017, it was one summer night, I left a brawl with some people, and I was in a state where clothes were ripped, blood was on me, and I had to walk it out, in a sense. I would never suspect that this one individual who at the time was, I would say, a lady of the night, saw me in distress. And I wonder about it, because why did she feel the need to assist some man on the street in a state where he was hurt? She took me to an area where I could be close to home, and get the needed care that I needed to, and I thank her for that. The reason I told this story is because she was a stranger who felt the need to help me out of understanding she might have been hurt. I never saw her again and wondered why she even decided to walk me near a place where I was safe. Why did she take the time to attend to me when her goal was to find money? I was just a man on the street with dirty clothes, and she felt the need to take care of me. That walk was not important. It was the end of the journey for these two men who became hosts to Jesus. They invited him into their home, and once the meal was shared with Jesus, giving the blessing to it, then they realized he was alive, and he disappeared. Wow. Talk about a paranormal activity. It caught these two men off guard, and they could only share these accounts with the disciples and hope that they would know what to do after learning of these events. Now, how should we look at this scripture in our lives as followers of Christ? We already know at this point he is risen. And Mary was the first to spread the news to disciples. What we are witnessing in this passage is to understand through our journeys and doubts of despair, Jesus will be with us along the way. Jesus will give us comfort to know that what we are suffering through is going to be a long road, but trust him and remember the things that he's given us to understand and act with others. They saw Jesus overcome and rose out of the tomb to be with them on the road, giving hope back and the promise of former prophets. They became believers and went back to Jerusalem to tell the disciples these things before them. They could have recognized it because of what had happened at the Last Supper before his arrest. These individuals could have been at the feast with Jesus and his disciples and were able to remember him and how he blessed the food. What they witnessed allowed them to know Jesus was alive and reflect on these events. I don't know about you, but what this event does for me is allow us as followers to believe that even the least or non-important of us that are called to accept Jesus as our foundation will be comforted by his love and always remember what he has shown. Jesus will be with us always, and we must not forget what he did by taking the cross and sacrificing himself for all the people he loved. We might not notice it at first. However, love will appear for us and give us the strength to carry on. When we need to remember Jesus, we will feel hope. And we should be able to talk to Jesus, to guide us, to this hope, the promise that God has for us. We should not worry anymore. He is alive. He is with us.
We are now at the time in our service for the giving of our gifts. We appreciate your gifts to support the ongoing ministries.